I visited a lot of tourist attractions in Sweden, and there are many amazing things to see. The Ice Hotel in Jukkasjärvi, the Vasa Museum, and the Viking village of Birka. But some of the attractions are a bit weird. This is a list of the 10 strangest tourist attractions in Sweden. In 1998, a fascinating project started at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Professors Nils Brenning and Gösta Gam had the idea to create the biggest scale model of the solar system in the world. They quickly decided to use the Globe Arena in Stockholm, called Avicii Arena these days, as the sun and the center of the model. The arena is 110 meters in diameter, and it's considered one of the 7 wonders of Sweden for some reason. The sun is of course orbited by all the planets and a lot of other celestial bodies. In total, there are 27 different stations in the Sweden solar system model, ranging from the sun and the planets to significant asteroids and dwarf planets. The whole model covers a span of 950 kilometers from Stockholm to Kiruna in the far north, so it's quite an ambitious project. Unfortunately, not all planets and models are all that interesting to look at. Some are awesome, and some are not as awesome. It's still a fascinating project, and it's well worth a road trip, at least to the sun and the planets closest to the sun. And I would say that this is one of the most unusual tourist attractions in Sweden. The county of Småland is famous for having huge forests and stingy people. But if you venture out into the woods close to the town of Rydal, you can find something very unusual. Here you can see the car graveyard at Kyrkö mosse. In the 1940s, a man called Åke Danielsson started a car junkyard at this site. Hundreds of cars were dumped here from the 1940s up until the 1980s, when Åke closed the junkyard. He moved away from the area in 1991, but the cars are still here. Some people want this place to be preserved as a part of Swedish car history and as a sort of open-air museum. Others point out that it's an environmental hazard to have all of these cars just lying around. Personally, I think that this is an amazing place to see. It's a part of Swedish car history and a very unusual tourist attraction as well. "50 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, you can find the town of Harads in Sweden. And in Harads you can find a place called Treehotel. Treehotel is one of the most unique hotels in the world, with cabins like the Mirror Cube and the UFO. They have a total of 8 unique cabins that are designed to be gorgeous and thought-provoking. 5 of the cabins were built in 2010, with 3 more being added since then. Dragonfly in 2013, 7th Room in 2016, and a new one called Biosphere in 2022. I haven't been to the Treehotel since 2020 though, so I don't have any footage of the Biosphere. Maybe a trip up there is long overdue. Either way, Treehotel is definitely one of the strangest and most interesting hotels in Sweden. Arnold is an intriguing person. He's visited more than 180 different countries, and he's spent a lot of time with different tribes and cultures around the world. He was born in 1957 in the small village of Önneköp in the south of Sweden, and ever since he was 5 years old, he's been fascinated with cannibals. He made his first round-the-world trip in 1985, and he spent 16 months on the road. That trip gave him a real taste for adventure. He's been to African jungles, remote islands in the Pacific, and all over South America as well. And during his travels, he's met both pygmy tribes as well as cannibals. His collection of curious items as well as interesting tales set the foundation for Arnold's Cannibal Museum that you can find in the village of Önneköp. Here you can see amazing items on display, and everything has a personal history connected with Arnold's travels. It's a spectacular place to visit and definitely one of the most unique tourist attractions in Sweden. 3 kilometers southeast of Skinnskatteberg, you can find a very strange hostel. Out in the middle of the forest, you find Kolarbyn Eco Lodge. It's a set of earthen cabins where you can spend the night, and it's open all year round, regardless of the weather. There's no running water and no electricity. You have to fetch water from a nearby well instead. They call it the most primitive hostel in Sweden, and it's a very popular place, strangely enough. From the Middle Ages and up until the early 1900s, Sweden produced a lot of charcoal. That took place in the woods, and it took a lot of time and effort, and the people who produced the charcoal needed somewhere to stay during that time. And they typically stayed in huts just like the ones in this hostel. So Kolarbyn is a very historical and also unusual way to spend the night. Stone circles can be found all over the world, and the most famous one is most likely Stonehenge in Salisbury. But Sweden has something just as interesting, not stone circles per se, but stone ships instead. There's around 2,000 different stone ships in Scandinavia, and they're Viking and Vendel era monuments with stone pillars placed in the shape of a ship. Many believe that these ships were connected with funeral rites and symbolizes the ship that would take the dead to hell. And others believe that they were used for completely different rites or ceremonies. The biggest of these stone ships in Sweden is called Stenar and can be found in the south of Sweden. It dates back to the Vendel Age, before the Viking Age, and it's quite a marvelous place to visit. It's a gorgeous and well-preserved monument, and it's located in a beautiful spot by the coast. And it is a pretty strange tourist attraction you can visit in Sweden. Yeehaw! Time to talk about some good old cowboys. Chaparral is a Wild West theme park in the town of Värnamo in Sweden, and it's been there since 1966. The park's founder, Bengt Erlandsson, also called Big Bengt, made a tour of the US back in 1956, and that made a big impression on him. He decided to build a slice of the Wild West in Sweden, and the small park he built in 1966 expanded more and more over the years. These days there's a Mexican-themed area, a Native American-themed area, museum exhibits, and daily cowboy shows. And of course, a lot more. If you want to throw axes or ride a steamboat or a steam train, you can do that at Chaparral. It's quite a popular place and quite strange as well. And I can't really help it, but I really enjoy the dedication that's gone into the park. In the southwest of Sweden, you can find a micronation called Ladonia, created by the now deceased artist Lars Vilks. No one actually lives in this micronation, but there's around 1,000 citizens spread out over Sweden and the rest of the world. Lars Vilks was a very controversial figure in Sweden, and he was a strong proponent of free speech. He also created a lot of controversial pieces of art, one of which was a driftwood sculpture called Nimis. Nimis was built without permission, and the question about what would happen to it turned into a decades-long legal battle. There's also another piece of art called Arcs right next to Nimis. That one was also created by Lars Vilks. These two pieces of art were the foundation for the micronation of Ladonia. Lars Vilks basically got so fed up with all the legal battles that he declared this area an independent nation. A nation that's apparently currently at war with Sweden, the US and San Marino for some reason. Even if it is a bit difficult to get to Nimis, it still attracts 40,000 visitors every year. If you fancy quite a strange tourist attraction in Sweden, then you should visit Ladonia and Nimis. Haunted houses can be found all over the world, and Sweden is no exception. The most haunted house in Sweden is called Borgvattnets prästgård, the Borgvattnet rectory, and you can also spend the night there. Ever since the 1920s, people have reported ghostly sightings, strange noises, and supernatural presences in the house. In 1947, a newspaper called Borgvattnet Sweden's most haunted house after dozens of reports from various priests who lived there. The reports ranged from strange sounds and ghostly images to physically being thrown out of chairs. In the 1970s, the house was open to the public as a place for the brave to spend the night. Unfortunately, I didn't see any spirits or supernatural beings when I spent the night there in 2021, but maybe you'll have more luck if you go there. Or maybe that would actually be more misfortune than luck if you happen to see something. Sweden is full of strange places and unusual tourist attractions, but something I find quite surprising is that the world's only James Bond museum can be found in Sweden. This amazing collection of James Bond memorabilia was assembled by a man called James Bond. Gunnar James Bond Schäfer is a man with a deep fascination for the spy 007, and in 2007 he legally changed his name to be James Bond. You can meet him and also see his incredible collection if you go to the town of Nybro in Sweden. Everything from posters to vehicles are on display, and if you have any interest at all in James Bond, you'll find this place amazing. I'm not a die-hard James Bond fan myself, but I absolutely love this place. There's so much to see, and there's so much dedication behind it all. This museum is fantastic, but I think it's safe to say that it's also one of the strangest tourist attractions in Sweden. And that's about it. That was a list of 10 of the most unusual tourist attractions you can find in Sweden. If you have any suggestions for places I missed, please let me know in the comments. Either way, like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.